I first became interested in this question of how we could spend our money better when I suddenly started making a lot more money, went from being a graduate student to being a faculty member, and I wondered how I could use it better. And I was surprised to find there was almost no good, solid evidence about how we can use our money in ways that actually make us happy. Lots of us have theories, obviously marketers have theories. In the world around us we see other people's theories about what money can be used for in order to increase human well-being, but I thought, well, let's try and test this. And so I wondered whether maybe people might actually get more happiness from using their money to benefit other people rather than themselves. And so to find out, we wanted to really use good experimental methodology. So we made a little money fall from the sky. We gave people on the campus at the University of British Columbia $5 or $20 bill first thing in the morning, and asked them to spend it in a particular way. We asked some people to spend it on others, some people to spend it on themselves, and by the end of the day it turned out that those people who had spent it on others were happier than those who had spent the money on themselves. That was one of our first studies. We then followed up and took it in a lot of additional directions.
Mm-hmm. And what is it? What are some of the things that people think they should be able to do with their money that'll make them happy that you and your colleagues who are doing work in this field have found really doesn't help?
Yeah, so what we see is people pouring money into material purchases. For example, we see people spending a lot of money to buy big, beautiful homes. There's no evidence that owning a home is great for your happiness. But yet that assumption is so powerful, and many people sink their money into that kind of major purchase, often overextending themselves. And we would argue, we being the scientific community, would argue that maybe you need to take some do some empirical research and consider whether there are better ways to spend that money. So in particular, there's some really cool work that's been done by Leif Van Boven, Tom Gilovich, and their colleagues looking at the value of spending money on experiences. So right now I'm here in Camden, Maine for an amazing conference called PopTech, meeting all of these incredible people, enjoying the beautiful fall foliage. It is an amazing experience that I'm going to remember forever. And it's something that I think affected me in a way that no material purchase could. And this is something that a lot of people find. It's if you think about the ways that you've used your money, often it's the experiences that you've had, whether it's a trip to Africa or just seeing, as an artist who you love perform in concert. Those are the kinds of life events that really matter for us and can shape our happiness, much more so than having the biggest house with the nicest granite countertops that you can find.
And some people assume that the more money they make, the happier they're going to be. How much money do you have to make to be really happy?
Well, it's a complicated question. Some people say, think money is the most important thing in the world for happiness. That's definitely not true. Some people think that money is irrelevant for happiness. That's not true either. So overall, money is related to happiness, but its effects start to dwindle. In particular, one really cool recent study suggests that once you're making about $75,000 a year, additional increases in income cease to have any real impact on your day-to-day emotional well-being. So obviously it's a very complicated picture. It's a hard question to answer, but what I think is interesting is that for so long we focused on the relationship between how much money we have and our happiness. I think it's time to start considering, what do we do with that money? Once you've got that money, whether you're earning $2 a day or $200,000 a year, what do you do with that money in a way that's going to actually promote your happiness? And that's what I think is the exciting question that's just beginning to pop open for us.
Mm-hmm. And I've got one more question. Okay. If you have the answer, you may not have this at your fingertips, but for the National Geographic audience, right? We're thinking globally. We're thinking about countries and cultures around the world. And I certainly recognize that if you live in extreme poverty and have no opportunities to escape it, you might be, well be miserable, and understandably so.
Yeah.
And so for countries in extreme poverty, probably extreme unhappiness is fairly prevalent. But when you get to sort of the top of the economic scale, do people who have looked at sort of gross national happiness, as the Bhutanese would say, find that the happiest countries are the wealthiest countries, or in general are there countries where overall the public reports being happier that aren't the very wealthiest ones in the world?
Right. So the answers you get do depend a bit on how you ask the questions, but there have certainly been lots of worldwide happiness surveys, and in general, it's better to live in a wealthy country than a poor country. So if you're throwing a dartboard at a world map and determining where your children are going to be born and spend the rest of their lives, they're probably going to be happier growing up in a wealthy country than a poor country on average. That said, there are poorer countries that that have pretty high levels of happiness. There are wealthy countries where levels of happiness are relatively low. So it is certainly not the only factor. And I think, everyone recognizes that bringing developing countries out of poverty is a good thing. But I think we have to think about what are the other factors that need to be considered too. So I think we need to make the bottom line not wealth, but well-being.
So, Elizabeth Dunn, thank you so much for taking time. Listening to you talk about happiness makes me happy.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.